Welcome to episode 113 of Let's Talk Geek, recorded on 24 October 2012. In the show, 100,000 Rand for winning a Tron. We've got the victor in studio to talk to us about his Tron winning AI. How is LTE better than earlier 3G technologies? And the Amazon scandal. What will happen when a handful of companies control all our data? Thanks for watching. Welcome to the show. In the show with me today, we've got Gerrit Vermeulen.
Good evening.
We've got Tim Hock.
Good evening.
And we've got Jacos Tron here, a special guest. Jaco's managed to do something fairly awesome.
Fairly awesome.
Pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome?
Very awesome.
A little bit better. We're getting there. We're getting there.
And now that those introductions are done, I'm Jan Vermeulen. Thanks for joining us. And before we get into the meat of the show, we've got a random.
We do have a random. The random for this week is Sanskrit, which I think I'm pronouncing correctly, is a historical Indo-Aryan language, which I don't think I'm pronouncing correctly, which is the primary liturgical language of Hinduism and a literary and scholarly language in Buddhism and Jainism. I think I got that one. So, yes, there's that. And we got to that because IT Crowd posted a really cool thing on Google+, which says, we have a new password scheme, which is your password must contain an uppercase letter, a punctuation mark, a 3-digit prime number, and a Sanskrit hieroglyph. And we got to that because 113 is a 3-digit prime number.
Sweet. And this will be our fallback random for the next 800 shows. Excellent.
Plus or minus. Or until we get bored.
What's the closest prime to 800?
I'll ask Wolfram Alpha
It'll be that many shows.
after the show.
Excellent.
There are lots of events coming up, so go check out stardates.co.za for that. We're not going to run through all of them, but we've got ZACon, for example, coming up this weekend. We've got an Ubuntu launch party happening at House for Hack.
This weekend.
Which we cannot be at because we have a D&D game. Very important.
Well, I think the Ubuntu launch party actually starts at 10 a.m.
Yes.
And then they're going to be running until late in the afternoon. So you could come in the morning, and I should be here, I think.
Sorry, I'm just going to hijack. Has anybody tried it yet?
Yes.
Ubuntu.
I actually yesterday, and we're going to talk about this one later, during the Apple event. During the Apple event, I decided after my wonderful ordeal that I needed something usable as opposed to Ubuntu server, which I can't really do too much on, except, run what I was doing with it. So I installed Ubuntu during that event. Started it just before, and before it was finished, I had Ubuntu running. I thought that was pretty cool. Try do that with Windows.
And do you like it?
Yeah.
I haven't heard nothing about it.
I haven't noticed a ton of changes.
Apparently they've got
Amazon
new lenses.
search. Yeah, a couple of new lenses. There's a lot to play with. And it seems a little bit faster. Maybe it's just me.
Well, you are running it on a completely different machine.
Yes,
the thing about
but it
this
is still
one
an ATI graphics card. So
is previously I just heard lots and lots of stuff about Ubuntu 12.04 and stuff like that. And with this one, it's just...
Yeah, there wasn't really anything momentous or...
There was a big ordeal about Amazon being included in search. So when you start searching for something in your main lens, now I can't remember what your dash.
Yeah.
You start getting shopping results now. And one of the things they included in there is Amazon shopping results for music. And there was a big hoo-ha about this as well. Because, now Ubuntu is trying to sell you stuff. And, there's probably some sort of advertising agreement. And as far as I recall, you can switch it off.
Yeah.
But by default, it's on. And that's the sort of thing that they're going to try and push further. Because when you search for something, it should either return the thing that's on your machine, or if it's not there, it should try and give you, here's the content, buy the content. And that's kind of where they're going, and
They've got the same thing for the Ubuntu One store, though.
Yes.
So it's not like they're only punting. I'm sure the Amazon referral link gets them some dosh.
Pretty much they're doing what Google does with your searches. I don't know, hopefully
Except now
they're
it's
showing it
straight into your OS.
But as long as they're making it very obvious that this is an advertising thing. Look, they're giving you a free product.
Yes.
And like Google
And
does.
if you don't like it, switch it off.
Yeah. And I know originally they didn't have the option to easily switch it off. And that's what the complaints fixed.
Moving on.
Anyway. Excellent. So first thing is we could not discuss... Wait, before we go there. If you're just joining us, join us on RC, rc.ltnet.tv. rc.letstalknetwork.tv if you feel like typing a lot, and port 6667 if you're using a proper client, and the channel is #altnet. If you're just going through the web interface, you'll join us automatically.
Click on pop-out chat.
/Nick space, change your nickname, please.
Or just when you sign in for the first time in the little box, just put in your
instead of
actual
being
nickname.
mib _ something. Cool. And you can grab us on Twitter, Google Plus, all those things, but we'll punt that really hard at the end of the show as well. Something we didn't get to discuss in much detail last week because Gerrit was getting robbed is the Asus PadFone 2 being announced. You picked up on this.
I did.
What did you like about it?
I was trying to follow what Asus was doing with the PadFone 2 because I really like the PadFone 1 and I like the whole concept of it. This is the idea of one device which you then dock into multiple kind of form factors. So you have a phone, which is the phone that you can see in that picture on the side next to my head over there, which docks into a tablet. And there's no mention of a keyboard docker this time. And I'm not sure if it's going to be backwards compatible with previous docks or anything like that. But essentially, it's lighter, it's thinner, it's got an S4 quad in there. So a quad-core Qualcomm S4 chip clocked at something like 1.5 gigahertz. And I'm really excited about the Qualcomm chips. They're doing some really cool stuff, and they're just going to power over everything.
Well, I mean, what's Adreno looking like? Because that was my real problem with Qualcomm chips from the beginning.
The new Adrenos, the 300 series, is looking very good indeed.
Okay.
And yes, that was also always my problem. Was
the reason the HTCs felt sluggish, in my opinion. Obviously, I mean, I couldn't test anything, but the processing side seemed fine and performed really well in benchmarks. But as soon as you hit the graphics on anything running a Qualcomm processor, the benchmarks would chug. Anything you run that required graphics acceleration chugged.
Even the dinky S4s, and I've played around with one of the lower range ones with the Desire X recently, and the benchmarks for it looked really good. So the benchmarks for that were outperforming all of HTC's high-end models from last year. So the Sensation and the Evo 3D. It was it broke all of those.
And for those wondering, because every time people talk about 3D graphics acceleration, you think gaming, and when it comes to these devices, that's not the case.
Well,
you need not 3D,
case, but you do need graphics acceleration for just your standard mobile UI. Yes.
It's actually, I think, in Android 2.2, it came baked in standard, proper graphics acceleration, right? Or was that JIT?
No, that was JIT. And they may have started at that point. There was always some form of it. It was just kind of hidden away. Then with Honeycomb, they started pushing it a lot more and putting a lot of extra work into it.
Then the reason we're having the show this week, Jaco, congratulations. You are the winner of the 100K Intellect AI Tron Challenge.
100,000 Rand.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, never mind. He has the best AI. Way cooler.
Exactly. That's what we're here about. Let's talk about AI for a little bit. What did you have to program exactly?
The competition.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Tron bot. They call it Tron, but I remember it more than this little snake games like 20 years ago where you have to corner your opponent and take use of the board as much as you can. And so the AI involved in that is you need to try and predict what your opponent is going to do and plan ahead of time. So the basic algorithm that people mostly use is the min-max tree, and then alpha-beta pruning, which just prune that tree. So basically you look at all the possible moves from the current situation, and then you look at for each of that moves, you look what your opponent can do, and you continue like that in the tree down. On each level, when you make a move, you pick the maximum, the best move, and your opponent wants to minimize your stuff. So it's basically like that. But at the end, you need to look. If you look at the board situation in chess as well, all these board games, you need to know or determine who's going to win this game. Anytime
Tim gets fined $50 for his phone ringing during the show.
So anytime during a game, you need to know who's going to win this match. And that's the most important part of writing AI for Tronbot or for chess or for checkers or or whatever.
What made this interesting, though, is that it wasn't just a flat board that you were playing on,
Yeah,
right?
it was on a sphere. So at the top poles, it was sort of wrapping around. It was a kind of weird because the top and bottom points was the same point. So
Yes, there was some confusion about that. I remember there being a bit of unhappiness at the playoffs, because some folks, for example, would write into the they would write themselves into the whole row. So to get a little technical, the specification for the challenge had people writing to a text file. And the text file, you had to write yourself into a particular point in that text file, but there wasn't a single point for the poles. The whole thing, operated basically like a grid, and it's just at the poles that that all however many points there were
30
across
points,
condensed onto one.
Yeah.
And so some folks wrote themselves into all 30 entries and got disqualified that way.
Yeah.
Was that clear from the beginning that you were not supposed to do that?
It wasn't really clear, but I discovered, yes, you need to write all that 30 points with your player if you enter that spot. But like a day before the competition, I had a bug or something where I submit my bot to the test server, and it was playing against this Thelma bot of theirs that was just spiraling down. But when their bot reaches the South Pole, it just told me I lost the game because I changed the other player's position.
And that happened to a lot of folks if their opponent hit the pole.
Yeah, if the other opponent reaches the pole.
Yes. So what were you doing? What was the bug?
The problem is I was changing the other player's position because they gave you the other player's position was, let's say, at position 0 at the pole. And now when I return, I have that whole row of the other player's position. And they saw that as illegal move.
Yes.
So at the end I just added the if statement, like if it was just my player or empty space, change it, otherwise leave it as is.
Yes. Okay, interesting.
And that helped.
Yeah, that helped.
That fixed the bug.
But it was crazy the last weekend. I couldn't really test it at all on the system because I got timeouts all the time because everybody was submitting and they somehow concurrently tested everybody's bot and
just ran out of resources.
Yeah, so I had to decide, okay, is it a bug in my program or not? I can't believe that my program will time out. I implemented a timeout that checked for 4 seconds or whatever. So at the end I was deciding, should I make it 1 second just to make sure it doesn't time out? Luckily I stick to the 4 seconds.
Yes,
it worked out.
And it worked.
No, cool. But yeah, I mean, so let that be a lesson. Don't leave the majority of your programming for the last night because everybody else is doing that. Yeah. So there was a test server to test against for quite a while, for quite a part of the. So you could test for edge cases like what happens if the opponent hits the pole and that sort of thing. So it's important to do that.
To test it.
Yeah.
The journey I always found this: you're always coming up with new ideas literally till the last moment. So you're always going to be testing right until you can't test anymore.
Yeah.
So hopefully you've done the majority of your coding, and then you're just iterating through to
optimize the algorithm. Yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about the final. I couldn't be there in person, but the other guys from the Let's Talk Geek crew were there recording the whole thing. Was it a tight match?
It was. The final one wasn't so tight, but the one just before the final, that was crazy tight.
Yeah, the final match you had to play twice, as I recall, but that was because the person you were playing against hadn't lost a game until that point. And
it was double elimination.
Yeah, it's double elimination.
It's like a karate tournament.
Yeah, so I didn't really fancy my chances because I already lost the game against Andrew.
Okay, yeah.
And the other guys, Andrew, Mr. T, and Gustav, I think, haven't lost a match. So I need to beat them twice in the final if I ever reach the final. And
Yeah, Gustav did look strong.
I think he was one of the first entries as well, which was very impressive.
Yeah, we live streamed the playoffs on Let's Talk Network. So and Gustav couldn't be there for the playoffs, so he was watching the live stream and was in IRC, and was educating us educating us all about the type of algorithms people were using based on the output that their bots were giving. Very informative, actually.
Yeah, I was mostly worried about Gustav and Andrew because there's a wargeeks.org or something website where they posted in the forums what they did. And I did not implement the stuff they did. It's like the whole chamber thing where you look at chambers, if there's like 3 chambers with a single connected component through them. It's a complicated way to calculate, or more accurate way to calculate how many cells your bot is controlling.
Yes.
But I just decided to stick to the basics, optimize the thing as much as possible, try to look ahead as far as possible,
and that
worked out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, where's the 100K now?
Well, yeah, most of it is
Every criminal in South Africa wants to know.
it's safely in the bank. It's not there.
The large check.
No box with some cash stashed under my bed. There's nothing like that. So it's in the bank. Most of it. Some of it. My wife is pregnant, so we're gonna use that money to
very nice.
to buy some
Good
baby
timing,
stuff and so on. But then there's this stem cell storage thing where you can store the stem cells of the baby.
I think it's used still a placenta so that later on it can help with certain diseases.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we was wondering about that before the competition, but it's expensive. It's like 20K, and but after the competition, it was easy to decide to go for it.
Cool.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, when you're not winning massive amounts of money by writing AI bots, what do you do?
My day job is at the CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. I hope I get that right.
Here in here in South Africa.
In South Africa, in Pretoria. There I work in the DPSS, it stands for Defence, Peace, Safety and Security section. Within that, I work at the OSS, which is Optronic Sensor Systems. There, I'm in the image processing group. We're about 4 or 5 people. There's image processing on video. So it's more military-based. We do wide area surveillance type of things. Try to catch rhino poachers and protect the borders of at the sea. We do image enhancement stuff, long-range surveillance. I can go into more detail in any of that if you want to.
Well, stuff that came up earlier in the show, for example, was the searchability of video. Now, last week we, as a bit of a punt, we recorded a video about database optimization. And some of the folks who stuck around for the live stream, there was a lot of interaction. It was really good to see, the amount of interest in a topic like that. But it ended up being a lot longer than we wanted it to. And it's once you've recorded a show and you didn't record it with the express purpose of splitting up afterwards, it's very difficult to do so without it seeming very unprofessional. But video is just not searchable. But you disagree.
Yeah, I think it's also searchable. Images are searchable. If you look at Google Goggles, the way they do it, you detect features in an image, interesting features, describe them, and then you have a vocabulary tree. So you put all these features in certain bins, and then you can create a very short descriptor of the image. So I'm sure you can do that with video as well.
But
my question is, how good is that nowadays? Because I know I've taken with Google Goggles pictures of like a beer bottle, and then suddenly I get a whole bunch of like these the right colors, but it's people, it's lampshades, it's streets. You know what I mean? It's matched the colors and the shading, but not the actual object. So I'm just wondering how actually good is it? Is this matching stuff? And I would imagine with Google they've got so much more to match against and so much more to train the stuff against. How good is the non-Google stuff? Or may you not?
I'm not exactly 100% sure what the base stuff is doing now, but I'm sure there's different ways to do that than the Google one. If you look at shapes instead of the gradients in the image, usually they use SIFT features, scale invariant feature transform, that describes the features in the image, and that's sensitive to some stuff. But I think if you look at the shapes and maybe extract shapes from the images.
And you're gonna have to parse the spoken language as well, because that's the most important part of our particular video. Is what was said. So you'll have to have some sort of audio.
That's a different thing to
voice recognition.
To voice to text or something, and then search the text or some pattern recognition in the audio. Yeah.
All right, so it can be done.
And one day I do believe it will be there, and I don't think we're that.
Yeah, it's not there.
Stuff like goggles is an indication that
be quite close.
Yeah.
As Google is amassing more and more and more and more data, the more you have to train against, the more, and as people out there get better at it. So I'm sure you guys are doing stuff, and that's disseminating as time is going by. One day we will have our robotic overlords out there.
And we welcome you.
Yes, now, before everybody else. We were the first.
That brings us to something else, cool
innovation.
In the scientific world that came up today, I think, is at least on Slashdot. And the headlines are bandwidth breakthrough. There's a team from 3 different universities that have published results showing that they can show like 1,000% increase by replacing packets in the TCP protocol, which is a redundancy, I know, but with algebraic equations. So in other words, you don't send just a packet. You send a sum of those packets, for example, is what their paper suggested. So packet 1 plus 2 times packet 2 plus 2 times packet 3 plus packet 4. And they, as an example, because I looked at the papers
my question, that sounds to me like error correction.
It's a form of error correction code, but it seems to be far more robust than your normal type of error correction codes, but basically error correction codes talk about adding redundant symbols to a transmission or whatever you want to call it. And in our case, for simplicity's sake, let's call them bits in TCP, right? Then the more redundant bits you add, the more bits you can correct. But this type of code, they can recover a whole lost packet by just solving the equation. That's the idea.
Okay, but my question about this is, look, I haven't read that's why I'm just wondering, this is about transferring things wirelessly.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So why is it about TCP? Isn't it actually just about wireless? You'd then run some protocol on top of that.
Yeah. So what they're suggesting is
it doesn't matter which protocol you use. It's just we're using.
It's information transfer.
Yeah.
We're talking about.
But they were looking specifically at TCP to improve transfer speeds over lossy networks. So they took Wi-Fi, for example,
and
stationary Wi-Fi
and LTE. Yeah, they took LTE.
Okay, cool. So stationary Wi-Fi and while moving in a train. And they showed improvements there. Now, what they did was they implemented a coding layer in between the IP layer of the stack and the TCP layer of the stack.
Okay.
They added a coding layer. So there's still a TCP frame around the whole thing. And essentially, I guess what this thing does is it transforms the packet, and then around that they've got to wrap a way to acknowledge the packets, because now instead of sending packets like TCP would expect to send them, they're sending a mathematical equation of packets, right? Okay, or the result rather of a mathematical equation of those packets.
Basically, you're replacing the congestion control and
yes.
those retransmission systems
with this.
So you're
replacing
they're being
the replaced.
Yes,
effectively you're replacing TCP.
Which is not a bad idea entirely.
Yeah. So they call it's still a transmission control protocol, but they call it TCP-NC, I think. And in this particular case, it's edge-to-edge TCP-NC, which they just call E2E.
Right. Now, where's the actual optimization? Sorry, I'm just asking you these things. I know you're not...
The results that they show, the real-world results that they show, is that they improved the physical bit rate on a Wi-Fi connection from 1 odd megabit per second to 16 megabits per second.
Now, my question
so that's what they published in the paper.
Are they correcting for lost packets?
Yes. If the packets get lost, instead of retransmitting the packet, so instead of you saying the packet got lost and then requesting and getting a retransmitted packet, you can solve the equation to get that packet back on the client side. So doing the equation would be more expensive than actually getting the packet the first time, but requesting the packet the second time would then be more expensive than just solving the equation.
Now,
especially considering
instead of doing this on the two endpoint mechanism, if you just did this between the on the communication layer, would that not be as efficient and solve these problems?
I haven't looked at the supporting research, but you're welcome to kick it off.
Go
apply for a job at the CSIR.
You know, because I know a lot of the stuff. Why are we getting faster and faster wireless? Is they're fixing the underlying communication mechanisms.
Sure.
And doing corrections there and all the rest of it too.
Yeah, but what this would hopefully allow is to fix something in the protocol stack. So in other words, you leave your existing infrastructure in place. So LTE is already far more spectrally efficient than 3G,
yes.
right? Now, combine that with with something that handles packet loss better. And so you don't have to replace the underlying or the infrastructure itself. You don't have to change the physical way that the routers and things work. You can just change the software.
Yeah, but you sort of have to change the endpoints.
Yes.
Which...
It's not quite the same.
Well, I'm thinking instead of doing that on the Wi-Fi mechanism, you just put a wrapper.
Yes.
And it does normal TCP, you wrap it there and unwrap it.
Yeah.
It's a new protocol, and then you only need to fix it at the place where you have the problem.
Yeah. And that's something that I didn't get to delve into. I wanted to see if this could still work through a normal router without changing that, if this is something you could just do in the application itself. So in other words, instead of using an API that just calls an existing TCP library, you write your own library, right? I mean, so in other words, you do this purely in software. In my head, but I don't know if that's practical, if in fact you do have to change stuff in the routers to make this work.
It's like sending a piece of code over the network, and that code executes at the other side that generates the data.
Yeah. The only thing you have to worry about is routers knowing where to send stuff.
It should, as long as you're still running this on top of IP.
Yeah, it's still on top of IP, but would the router know to strip out the extra...
It would just basically... It would work fine. As long as you, on IP, basically, you've written your own wrappers at the endpoint.
Yes.
So it's like UDP.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm thinking. You take UDP, and because what John Carmack did, this is why I'm thinking you can do this all in software. What John Carmack did for Quake 2, I think, is he took UDP. He didn't want a full TCP stack because it was highly inefficient.
Yeah.
So he took UDP and added very, very rudimentary transmission control on top of that, to make it just a little more robust.
Yes,
to make the actual connections.
But like the data that you don't need on the other end, that's just UDP. If that dies, who cares?
All right. Apparently, we're losing people, and we need to move on. Fine. Sorry, I'm enjoying the topic, but I know I'm a network geek, so
this would not be a geek show if we didn't talk about Apple's announcements this week.
And
we'll keep it brief for the people in the IRC.
Let's talk about apples and oranges. Yes.
We'll keep it brief for the guys in IRC, but I think we've got to mention some stuff. So first thing is they've finally refreshed the iMac and Mac Mini.
Yes.
So, and I must say,
iMac looks sexy. So for the people watching the video feed, it's on the screen now, going from the boat anchor iMini
iMac
to the new one, which is 5 millimeters thin.
Well, it bulges a little.
It bulges in the back,
in fairness,
but just think about that.
It's basically like a laptop mounted to a 27-inch screen.
Yeah.
It even uses a mobile graphics card. So,
oh really?
But
I didn't catch
that. You can. The maximum you can use on the 27-inch is the GeForce 680 MX.
That's still not a terrible graphics
No
card.
benchmarks on that yet. So it's going to be interesting to see. I looked at the 675 MX, which is what it ships with default, and it's not bad, but it can't play Guild Wars 2 in Ultra. So disqualified.
Oh.
I'm waiting for
Denied.
the 680 MX. Well, dude, I can't play Guild Wars 2 in Ultra, and I've got like a desktop Radeon 5870 or something. So now, that said, I mean, while I use a PC at home, like just watching that stream live makes you want to buy it.
Yeah.
That distortion field is still strong.
Yeah.
That reality distortion field. You're like, man, I want this thing. And then you think about it, you're like, why do
I want this thing? I don't know.
Anyway, so...
refresh the Mac Mini as well, which is long due, 2 years?
Yeah.
Is it 2 years now that it hasn't had an update? So
yeah. Then the 13-inch MacBook Pro didn't so much get a refresh as a Retina version.
Yeah.
So same as the 15-inch MacBook Pro, except now it's 13-inch.
And they
with
bumped
Retina.
up the RAM to 8 gigs. I don't think that's normally standard.
No, but it's necessary. So speak to a Mac user. If you've got something with less than 8 gigs of RAM, it's unusable. Mac is unusable with anything under 8 gigs of RAM.
But
it's still making a big difference.
It's Retina. They haven't put a discrete graphics card in there, so it's still running an Intel HD 4000.
I think so.
Interesting.
Yes.
But
By
because
default.
it's a Retina screen. So
Yeah.
But maybe have they not increased the RAM in it or something like that?
We'd have to see what they've done with the
maybe
Ivy
the RAM
Bridge.
bump is able to make
But
up for that.
It's just
Or
Ivy
maybe
Bridge.
the HD 4000 is just better than what I actually thought it was.
Anyway, so that looks interesting, and hopefully I'll get to play with that and report back. It does look interesting. And I know people are like, oh, optical drives, boo, but even though I rarely use it, there are times where I need to load a piece of software from an optical drive.
Must I tell you why you want an optical drive? Because you can buy a replacement thing to put a second hard drive in, which I've done. I have 2 hard drives in my Mac, where the one is and it's actually quite useful because you can get a reasonably sized SSD then, and then get a huge second drive for your storage.
I don't want to get bogged down in the Apple stuff too much because the important stuff. There's the pretty iMac.
The iMac. And that thing is gorgeous.
Because the big announcement of the day.
No, there are 2 announcements left. The one.
They were both big.
Kind of.
The big announcement of the day was they announced a 4th generation iPad.
Yes.
And an 8-inch, 7.9-inch iPad mini.
Yes.
Right. So
the iPad mini we've pretty much known about for a month or 2 now.
Yeah.
I mean, it started leaking, and then the leaks just couldn't stop, so it turned into a flood.
Yeah. But what's interesting?
Didn't hear anything about the iPad 4.
Yeah, except we did. But I don't want to toot our horn there because it's going to sound bad for us because we didn't run the damn story. But
Blame me on.
there were rumors about but the iPad Mini. The thing about this rumor mongering is it completely drowned out all the other stuff that they announced. Apple announced a hybrid drive
Except
option.
it's also perhaps not a hybrid drive. What they're calling it a fusion drive, and it's, in the presentation it came across as something like a hybrid drive.
Fusion drive?
Yeah, well, they call it not fusion drive. Did I miss that?
No, it's Fusion Drive, man.
No, I'm just laughing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Geek reference.
SSD
Yeah.
and high capacity magnetic storage drive, and they kind of mash them together. So it sounds a lot like a hybrid drive, but there's a really cool article on Ars Technica where they
Does
actually
the Fusion
try and
drive make it go really fast?
Yes. So where they actually try and figure out exactly what this is, because obviously the people watching the Ars Technica live stream also went, this sounds like a hybrid drive, and then they went, but no, this sounds kind of like what you have in servers as well. And they broke it down a bit, and it's a bit, it sounds a bit more like it's what you get in servers with, I think it's automatic caching or something like that, where it caches what you have or what you're busy using on a faster hard drive, and then as you stop using those things, it uncaches them and puts them in the slower storage. On servers, I think that's a bit or a byte level or something along that line, and what it sounds like what they're doing with the Fusion drive is it's a file level cache. So it's smart enough to know that as you're using things, as you're accessing things from hard drive, it's caching them onto the faster SSD and uncaching them as you stop using things.
Isn't this like the...
Isn't this what hybrid drives do?
Yes.
No. Well, hybrid drives, you have to tell it, put stuff on the SSD and put stuff on the magnetic storage. It doesn't switch between them automatically for you.
But still something here's telling it to do this. At the end of the day...
So it's a hybrid drive with smart software.
Yes.
Which, if you get software for Windows that does
Possibly.
that, you do.
But then you need to get hybrid drives like these because it's a really high capacity SSD.
Yes.
And a really high capacity hard drive by comparison to what you can get from
128
Seagate.
at least.
The Seagates I could find didn't go above 750 gigs.
Yeah.
This goes up to
I was
3
talking.
terabytes of magnetic storage. Yeah. So,
So
anyway.
there's that. Then iPad 4, which looks like a minor bump from the iPad 3. The thing that I'm going on about, the reason they did this is the lightning connector.
And I have to disagree with you because I think there's more to it than that. But before that, I want to make a blanket statement about this iPad thing. In the 90s, in the 90s, when Apple started going downhill, they were churning out, they were refreshing products, and they were churning out like derivatives of products, right? So when Steve Jobs came in, what he did was exactly what Larry Page and I think it's Larry Page and Sergey are doing at Google. I think it's Larry Page. Culls. He culls all the extraneous stuff and focuses
and
it.
Focused on certain.
What
products.
this feels like is the iPad 4 is what the iPad 3 should have been. It has proper pentaband LTE.
Yes.
It has the lightning connector.
Yes.
It has something else which was important that I don't remember now.
Processor.
The A6X.
The A6X.
Right. So,
yeah,
so if you look at the history of the iPad, it was A4, A5, and then suddenly A5X. They always launched, either announced a new processor or used the new processor that was announced in the iPhone, in the iPad.
There were only 2 generations to go on.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of.
No, it's not a massive data point, but it does. It's not a massive history to go on. But I mean, it's like the iPad 3 just broke with tradition.
The iPad 4 is complete outlier because it's 6 months after the iPad 3 and it's a slight bump over here and over there.
But it strikes me as like what the iPad 3 should have been, similar to how the iPhone 5 is.
What the 4S should
be. The iPhone 5, the 4S should not have been, and the iPhone 5 should have been launched there. But engineering takes time, I guess. So I don't want to harp on it too much. But the iPad Mini to me is also, I just don't see it. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it performs because everybody mocked the iPad when it was first launched.
Well, everyone mocked the iPad, and then with smaller tablets busy launching, so you had things like the Playbook and the Galaxy Tab at the time, and Apple went after those and said, no, you just can't do that. We'd have to sell sandpaper to go with your 7-inch tablet because you can't use the screen. Your fat fingers won't be able to use it properly.
Yeah, you'd have to file them down to points.
Yes.
Sure, but
So
I mean, more than that, I mean, folks dissed the iPad when it first launched.
That might have been mostly because of the name.
The name was a factor. Now I know I'm putting my neck out there, like stretching my neck, but the iPad Mini, I just don't know. I just don't see.
That price point.
And the price point is the problem.
Yes, that's the thing that
I'd rather pay a bit more and get
the price point for this is $330.
It's like
now,
our competitors are launching smaller pads and they're doing well, especially the Kindle Fire and the Nexus 7. If you look at those, we have to compete in that space, and that just doesn't strike me as something Apple would do unless it were
the iPad
really
Mini
important.
is very reactionary, and the price point. But the thing is, they can't compete on the price point that Amazon and Google are giving them,
which is $199, right?
Which is $199 for the
US dollars.
for the base model, before sales tax and that. But this is now you have to remember Amazon and Google aren't making profit on these products.
Sure, but put this in context. The iPad 2 is still around. So last point, iPad 2 is still around for $399, right? The cheapest iPad Mini sells for $329. $329. Sorry, I had it right in my notes. $70 times 8.6 is 600 Rand difference between a 10-inch tablet and an 8-inch tablet. So,
and one of the things they tried to punt in the presentation was the iPad Mini has more screen real estate than other competing 7-inch tablets. I'm like, with that argument, I should just be buying the normal iPad.
Indeed. And also, it doesn't have higher resolution than the Nexus 7. With that, I'd like to give attention to and it's a pity I didn't get a screen grab of the tweet. I do apologize for that. But we had a viewer question from Titus Madua, who I hope is watching.
You do have a screen grab of the tweet.
Ah, excellent. That's because we have an
for the win.
Awesome mixer. The
question is, how would one benefit from using the new LTE instead of utilizing the 3G USB HSDPA?
Okay.
Lots of terms.
Yeah, and it's a valid question and a valuable question because there are two perspectives, at least from my side. From my perspective, there are two perspectives, two angles to tackle this question from, right? First is from a consumer angle, and you can go, and like right now as a consumer, it means nothing because it's faster speed, right, which is not nothing, but it's faster speed at the same price. So you're just going to burn through your bundle quicker.
Well, you're going to have to wait a short time for things to cache or load.
Yes.
Things happen quicker. So look, if you monitor yourself, you can spend the same amount.
Yeah.
This is
but
also
always
provided that you are in the center of Joburg.
Yes, the coverage is limited. So the place...
There's one provider in a small radius in Joburg.
For now, but the others will launch by the end of the year.
The way I'm seeing this is when one day HSTPA gets replaced with this, why?
Okay, so let's talk about that perspective, because that's also an important perspective. Because even though right now LTE coverage is limited, and it really, I don't think it makes sense to try and switch over to it unless you're going to be in that coverage area the majority of the time. However, from a technical perspective, what LTE offers is far greater spectral efficiency, which means that theoretically you should be able to fit more customers onto the same base station, hopefully.
So better coverage.
Yes and no. So where the coverage gets really interesting is 3G, because it uses WCDMA, which is wideband code division multiple access. Correct me if I'm wrong on the IRC.
Carrier division multiple access.
Yeah, I think it's carrier.
Okay, so it uses a technology called WCDMA. Okay, and it causes a phenomenon around cell towers called cell breathing. The more people climb onto the cell, the smaller it gets.
I've experienced this.
Right. So, and Cell C has experienced this with their 900 megahertz. Because, and so also a technical point to remember is that the lower the frequency is that you roll out your network in, the bigger the cell is effectively, the farther that signal can travel. So that's why 900 megahertz spectrum is so suitable for covering rural areas, because it means you can put up one base station and cover a far greater geographic area. The digital dividend, which is an 800 megahertz spectrum, which we are waiting for, if the DOC is listening, I'm going to say this every week, would offer you an even wider coverage. All right.
The lower frequencies also offer you better penetration.
Yes, but now you've got wider coverage over a geographical area, which means more customers on a cell. A cell can only handle a certain amount of customers. B, the more customers are loaded onto that cell in WCDMA, the smaller it gets. But it's not that the coverage footprint itself shrinks. The noise floor is raised. It was the way it was explained to me. So the devices have more noise to contend with. So
I've heard that it actually does shrink to compensate for noise.
That might be a way to try and compensate for the noise. Sure. But I know that people on the edges fall off because the devices, this SNR, the signal to noise ratio, becomes such that the device can't pick out the signal from the noise.
Yeah.
So LTE uses a different technology called orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. And that is far more robust for this. So the more people you load on, the noise floor isn't raised so significantly that people start falling off on the edges. As far as I understand, it's not like there's no cell breathing, but it's actually significantly less than. So yes, it'll provide more deterministic, I want to say,
more stable coverage.
And more stable coverage. So that's a nice thing for the people planning the networks. It's a nice thing for customers who fall in edges, even though, as a customer, you don't know that.
Little wedge of cell C that I'm in there.
Yeah. So, as a customer, you don't even notice that. So, but yeah, and greater spectral efficiency is also a good thing from a radio planning perspective, but also will eventually translate into benefits for the end user. But it will be invisible. Largely.
Well, one thing, though, you say it will be invisible. Look, assuming the amount of bandwidth you consume on wireless at the moment stays the same, because we capped, right? So most people are not going to try spend more money. So generally, you're going to get a slight increase of downloads, but they should still limit themselves. The thing is, you're now on downloading and off the network quicker. So never mind, the underlying network's going to become more efficient.
Yeah. So what right now, 3G HSPA plus networks, right? They allow, you can get up to, the radio side allows up to 40, 80, and it can go up to 160 megabits per second, right? So let's say you get 20 megabits per second if you're within a reasonable distance of a tower, there's sufficient backhaul, etc.
By reasonable distance, he means within 10 feet.
Not quite that bad, but you can get 20 megabits per second on normal 3G technology. Now, but I mean, you're far more likely to get something around the range of 1 to 5 megabits per second. What LTE will offer is not necessarily higher sustained speeds than that. Let's hope for 10 megabits per second for everybody, right? But so that's not the 100 megabits per second that the LTE press releases are promising. But what that, as Tim is saying, it does offer you a far more reliable connection. You get on the network, you get what you need for 10 megabits per second, and you terminate your connection. Somebody else can have a slice of frequency. So, yeah, I mean, from that perspective, you might even go, hang on a second, my speeds on LTE are no faster than I had on 3G because my 3G coverage was great. Yes, but the technology itself has inherent benefits that will make your connection just better.
I guess that there won't be a lot of cases like that.
It gives you more for less.
Hopefully. Yes.
Hopefully.
Theoretically.
And apparently, just sorry, from
the prices have not been coming down, by the way.
It improves latency.
Yes. So I did want to mention that as a parting shot. We have gamed on LTE. Now, to be fair, the real game I played was a StarCraft game at the MTN offices, so it's not that fair a thing. But I've also tested it at home. And, the latency is far better. And more importantly, the jitter. So in other words, the variance in the latency. So it doesn't help. You get 7 milliseconds latency on one packet and 120 milliseconds latency on another packet. So you need to have a
stable connection.
Not just stable, but a measurable and with latency within certain bounds.
Yeah.
And then you might not be able to play an FPS as well as you can on a wired connection, but you should be able to play things like WoW, MMOs and Heroes of New Earth, League of Legends, those types of games.
One thing we did notice when we try to stream with it, there is still occasionally some latency.
Yeah, it is still bursty.
You can't stream for long periods of time.
Yeah,
this was on very early betas.
We'll chat to the networks to see if that's something that they can improve.
Just look, streaming is an extreme. Streaming videos, I am saying, is an extreme case.
Yes.
Of where you want little to no latency.
But the networks might also look at that and go, this guy has a sustained data connection. It looks like peer-to-peer traffic to me. I'm going to downgrade your priority because it's impacting the quality of my network overall.
My thing is that if I'm on uncapped, fine. If I'm paying for every megabyte, how dare you?
No, well, they dare, because the thing is, make no mistake, they want you to burn through those megabytes as fast as possible. So this is something I know that there's been a lot of hatred for Jannie van Zyl, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jannie. And he makes a valid argument when he says, why would the network throttle you if you're on a capped connection when they want you to burn through that as quickly as possible? They don't. The only reason they do that is to try and ensure that the quality of the network remains good. So the only reason they would do that on a streaming video connection is to go, you're impacting the quality of my network. And maybe it isn't even. Maybe it's just an automated safeguard that's misbehaving that they need to look at. But then they need feedback from guys like us to go, hey, listen, I'm streaming video and your LTE's sucking. Fix it, please.
Yeah. Look, I still...
You should know, network management is hard.
I know network management. I know shaping is hard. And I can see why you do have shaping on misbehaving traffic, but still, that's generally on uncapped networks, right? If I'm paying a decent price for that connection,
let's be honest, mobile bandwidth in this country is ridiculously expensive.
and then on top of that, you're shaping me. I feel like I have a right to get upset.
Fair enough. Enough.
Okay. Anyway, we've got to move on.
Yeah, indeed. But next topic is 16-bit GIMP. And we're not talking about the executable. It's not that this is running on Windows 3.11.
64-bit.
This is about the bits in the color channels.
Yes.
So instead of a color channel red, blue, green being 8 bits, they are now 16 or 32 bits wide.
Where this confused me is like, yeah, but we have 32-bit color. And it's like, because you have 8 bits for green, 8 bits for red,
8 bits for blue,
and 8 bits for alpha.
Alpha, exactly. But now my question is, what do you need 16 or 32 bits for? Jaco. You educate
Help
me.
us out. Our optical person who knows more about this than we do.
Well, yeah, sometimes, but I guess you need to better than 8-bit source to make it useful. But for example, we've got some thermal cameras which is working in 16-bit, and then you get more information. 8 bits is enough for your eyes, but if you process in 16 bits, you can see, you get a lot more information. To process stuff, you can change exposures or do some histogram equalizations in different ranges, or sharpen the image more.
And actually, in fact, that's saying is, so basically where it might be interesting is if you're recording, because you always know when you process something, you lose a lot of information.
Yes.
So now
you have a lot more information to be able to lose.
You always want to edit the raw information when you compress it, because you always give it. Now when you compress it, what you're throwing away eventually is you can get a much better image. Starting with a better thing.
Yeah,
I'm trying to explain.
I mean, sometimes a part of the image gets oversaturated.
Yeah.
But now, if you have that information, you can change the image and actually see what's going on in that white saturated part.
Okay. So in other words, you actually store the saturation level in...
you're more likely to get variation. So before you would get white, but now you would have different shades of white.
Yes.
Okay.
Which you would actually see, so you could then start differentiating and hopefully correct better.
Yes.
If I
but you need a 16-bit source then. Otherwise, if you take an 8-bit image,
and
that to 16-bit,
what could give us like a digital camera that's not going to be a 16 or 32-bit source per channel, right?
I'm not sure. Some of the cameras might have. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. But I mean, if we're looking at fancy stuff like radio astronomy, infrared.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got more than 16 bits maybe there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, while we're talking about radio astronomy, did you see that?
Wait. I had my one. Do you know why we need this? For the iPad 5. To go with the Retina display. I wonder
which will be coming out next month. You heard it here first, folks.
With the color profile that your maximum eye can see, so it'd be better than what your eye can actually visualize. And then we have true images. That's just being sarcastic, sorry.
We'll stop now.
Anyway, I was talking about going to space, and Dropbox has something cool going on. They're calling it the space race, and basically what this is tertiary institutions, universities, and high schools. So educational institutions sign up. You have to have an email address from that institution, however, and
you sign up with that email address for a new account.
Yes,
and
you can get lots and lots of space on Dropbox. So space race, you see that? You can get an extra 3 gigs for 2 years, plus the space your school earns. So your school can earn space in this competition as well. So I'm not going to, through their ranking, I'm not going to get into it because there's a whole website on Dropbox associated with this. You can check
in the show notes.
You can check stuff in the show notes, and we'll probably paste it into RC. So right now, however, the important part is not how much space you can earn, but what you can do for your tertiary institution. So the South African leaderboards, and I couldn't help my tertiary institution because it recently upgraded to Google, and now my email to that address gets routed to a mailbox that doesn't exist because they didn't give me a Google. Because I'm no longer a registered student. But technically, I would be breaking the rules anyway because you have to be a registered student with the institution to be able to participate in the competition. So technically, I'm not really allowed to participate anyway. So here it is.
Register for like one course.
10th place in South Africa with 3 space racers and 7 points. Okay, I'm not going to do this for all of them, I promise. Northwest University. Hey. In 9th place, my alma mater, I am disappointed, is the University of Pretoria.
How many people?
5 people.
What is this? I don't even.
Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, 16 people. University of KZN, 16 people. UNISA, really guys, 16 people. That should be just an out-and-out winner. Like, those guys are massive. Seriously, get your act together. Rhodes University, 23. UJ, 51. WITS, 79. UCT, 196. And naturally, Cape Townians, Stellenbosch, 250. So...
that's because they're signing up on that free Wi-Fi.
The rest of you need to sort your stuff out. Single digits, really? No.
Yeah, that's just not on.
MIT is the #1 ranking in the
Yeah, so the global rankings are MIT number
Obviously.
1, 15,000. Yeah, obviously, but with 37,000 points. However, the National University of Singapore has more space racers, 18,000, but less points. So the points are not necessarily like there are ways to earn points.
Okay. Yes.
Outside of just signing up. Then Taiwan in third place, National Taiwan University, 13,000. So you can see it's tight. Nanyang Technological University. Anyway, the global rankings are all on there. So you can go check that out. The important one was the South African ones because I wanted to give you a kick in the pants. Yes. Get your stuff together. We can't have this. Then,
talking about getting your stuff together.
Yeah, let's. It's time for the rant.
I've been ranting all night. What are you talking about?
we did those before the show.
Yeah. It's time for the rant, and the rant is about DRM. So yeah, you saw this coming.
And in this week's scandal,
yeah, there was a bit of a scandal. You'll get us copyright infringement notices on YouTube.
That's why I stopped.
There was a bit of a scandal because a Norwegian lady named Lynn allegedly lost her Kindle account. This was the first report. Lost her Kindle account.
Well, Amazon shut it down.
Shut it down and allegedly wiped her Kindle. It was later revealed that, in fact, Amazon did not wipe her Kindle. The Kindle was broken, but they did close down her account.
So she couldn't reload the stuff.
Yeah, and so she
couldn't get to any of her things.
She was trying to get a new Kindle. And then they basically blocked her and said, sorry, you can't get a new Kindle. We're not going to do anything further for you, blah, blah, blah. Now, in the days since the scandal has happened, Amazon PR has finally gotten off their lazy butts and sent out a press statement to say, sorry, we did look into the matter. Accounts that are blocked should still be able to access their content. So even though they block your account,
so you can't buy more things. Yes. You should still be able to have access to whatever things you.
It is worth noting that at no point did they tell her what she did wrong. So it's assumed that she's triggered some sort of fraud filter. So that seems to be related to the fact that she bought a UK Kindle secondhand, from the sounds of things, and I think she's got a UK account, but she's buying from Norway.
No,
or as Sarah Palin would say, Norwegia. Anyway,
I think a lot of us would be in trouble for all this stuff. Then
imagine.
Anyway, yes.
So talking about having your eggs in one basket. Sorry, I'm interjecting.
I think she's actually using a Norway account.
Okay, but on a UK Kindle.
But yeah, on a UK Kindle that she bought secondhand after buying a first Kindle through a friend. So it's a very convoluted story because she can't get a Kindle in Norway
like South Africa, there's no Amazon presence.
Never mind.
We can buy them at retail now.
People are human. We have these weird convoluted things where we get these secondhand things.
We have these weird convoluted things because we can't get to it in the normal way. So we figure out ways to get what we want.
And also, and secondhand, cheaply, you don't want to pay
do
full
it
price
the way
for
we
stuff.
used to do with books. These are book replacements.
Yes.
So why can't I do what I do with
And it's also worth noting that they only reopened her account after
a media
fairly,
shitstorm.
Yeah.
I mean, bleep storm.
A fairly big crap storm. A bunch of big publications picked it up. Eventually, Boing and Cory Doctorow had it as well.
Computer World UK wrote about it, and at some point, Guardian picked up on it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Dun. So Guardian got some details wrong. The Computer World report seems to be the most accurate at this stage.
Okay.
Computer World UK, to emphasize that, from Phil Schiller? No, Phil Schiller is the Apple guy. It's Ship. Somebody's Ship. Anyway, and so the rant is this, okay? Now, Amazon is not the only place where you've got a whole lot of your data owned by a company, effectively. These people don't see your data as your data. They see it as their data that they license to you, right? So Google is a little better at this for now, but Google controls a whole lot of our stuff. Imagine running your business through Google Apps. Imagine running your business through Microsoft's Cloud Office. Imagine your books in Amazon, your games in Steam, your apps in the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store, BlackBerry App World, pick a store, and they cut you off.
Right now, with Google, they cut us off right now. Much we could recut, but we'd have
It'd be panic stations.
That is the day that I become a hermit.
And strangely, it's not the email. The email we could fix. It's all the stuff in damn Google Docs that we've got. How we're tracking stuff.
Yes.
So we can share and collaborate.
So something gets flagged and automated out, because these algorithms, let's get real, these guys have algorithms tracking whether stuff is fraudulent or not. And Google has been nice. I mean, they have flagged me because I tried to buy stuff with a South African credit card on the Google Music Store. Of course I'm going to try.
So did I.
And they flagged me as a fraudster, and I had to prove to them that I wasn't. Right? But at least they afforded me the opportunity. For now. Amazon does not even afford you that. So basically what I want to tell people is this. Remember the 5th of November. Remember, for the love of pi, when you buy these services, when you buy a book through Amazon, you are not buying a book despite what the advertising tells you. You are licensing something. Anything in the cloud, you are licensing it, and they own it all.
Wait.
And they can switch it off if they want.
Can I tell you the solution, which is in a very grey area?
We were going to get to this. Solution time.
Calibri.
Yeah.
Get Calibri.
For Amazon? Good solution.
Amazon.
For any e-reader, I think.
Google how there's some plugins you then install in it, and you can extract your books for
either you can download your books onto the Kindle and then plug it in and have Calibri import them, or what I've actually done is I went and installed the Windows app, downloaded all of the books, so then they all get shared into the same directory. Then there are a couple of plugins you can get through some fancy Googling to break the DRM.
I did the same, just using your Kindle.
Yeah. So you can do that. So you download all your books, you can break the DRM if you want to, and then you can store those somewhere else, like, say, Dropbox. You don't share them, just store them.
Dropbox is another example of something that can get shut down on
Exactly, but store them somewhere else.
Yes.
Store them.
So this is the other thing I want to get.
Well, but Dropbox to me is not such a big problem, because the actual files then are still stored. If they turn off tomorrow, I'm fine.
You don't know that they've got remote wipe capability.
They probably
I do that, which is why I have a second backup of all this stuff.
Exactly. So now that's what I'm talking about.
Backups?
Yeah.
For your backups.
Well, yes. So the cloud storage, think of cloud storage as convenience, right? Yes. So these people that tout their stuff as cloud backups, remember that they're stored in the United States. And if they suspect you of the stuff that is in the United States, if they suspect you of terrorism, they will shut you down, right? So, just be careful of stuff like that. Get a NAS, some private storage that you can get somewhere.
External hard drive.
Think of the cloud as convenience.
I'm not pro for non-tech people. NASs.
A NAS, man. Really?
Yeah.
Break.
Yeah.
I guess.
Anyway, yes.
All right. So that's the rant. There are solutions to the problems. Just be
creative Googling.
Just be careful and don't say you weren't warned. I mean, it might seem a little tinfoil hatty right now, but it's happening. And it's happening on the small stuff first, and it's happened on like MMOs, like books, like entertainment, but it's going to happen on the big stuff later. So be careful. All right, so it's Kickstarter hour on Let's Talk Geek. And this week's Kickstarter is a game called Star Citizen. And this is very cool. So those who are watching the video stream, you'll be seeing a screenshot of Squadron 42. That's, from the sounds of it, that's the campaign in Star Citizen. Star Citizen is meant to be a really, really big game. It's from the guy behind Wing Commander and Freelancer.
And as I was watching this, I was thinking, this looks like Wing Commander.
Yeah. So
I'm now officially interested.
Yeah, it's got Wing Commander elements, but it's also got more space simmy elements. So you can fly the fighter, but there's also a game where you can control the frigate.
So more like Eve?
I don't know, in all honesty. So the guy explained the stuff, and I don't quite know how it's gonna work in the end.
Wing Commander with multiple ships you can fly.
Yeah, multiple battle stations. So in other words, think of the Millennium. One example I think they gave was think of the Millennium Falcon with Luke on guns. So somebody will be flying, somebody will be on guns. There'll be stuff like that, but the campaign sounds like there'll be a lot of fighter flying, and there'll be economy and all kinds of stuff that was in Freelancer as well. So this is coming to PC, and the guy touted the PC quite a lot. He said, where are the Space Sim games, where are the PC games? I'm back in the game. I'm going to make this for PC and for Space Sim aficionados.
And they told me not to bother, only do consoles and stuff like that. I said, no, you can't do this on consoles.
The graphics look really pretty. They've spent a lot of time on graphics to punt the game. And yeah, so go check it out. I think it's definitely worthwhile. It's this guy's re-entry into gaming. I didn't know this, but apparently the guy behind Wing Commander, his name is Chris Roberts. He actually bowed out. He sold his company to Microsoft that made Freelancer, and he took a sabbatical for since Freelancer. And he was in movies and that sort of thing, and now he's back, and he's back with this. So it looks good. Check it out. And no Let's Talk Geek episode be complete without some fan corrections. And so this week's fan correction comes from my sub-editor, who says we say Segway wrong because we say Segway.
Yeah, isn't it Segway?
It's Segway.
Okay.
Yeah. So apparently even the little motor thingy,
yeah,
like when I type that into Google Translate, it says Segway. It's not a Segway, even though it's spelt Segway. Anyway, so Segway, as in you divert sort of from one topic into the other, like me going from
you go from
radio astronomy into space.
Well,
Dropbox
in our case, it's more like we're busy with one topic and then suddenly we talk about something which we don't have in the show notes at all.
You're talking about segways and you go into rhinos.
Indeed. So, rhinos.
Indeed, rhinos. and it's Kickstarter. It's still Kickstarter time.
It's Kickstarter, and it's our kicker for the show.
Yes, it is. So this is a South African developed game on Kickstarter to help the rhino poaching. Game is called Rhino Rumble. And it's going to be an iOS game, so we're looking iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, I guess. It's a forward runner, and you get to control Rufus the rhino and his girl companion, who still doesn't have a name yet.
Yes, because that's part of the Kickstarter campaign.
Yes.
It's to name her.
And yeah, that's one of the levels that you can pick, but it's kind of one of the more expensive levels. I think it's $50 or $100 or something that you can pick a name for the character. And that character is based on a real character that rode rhinos in South Africa. True story.
So just because we need to land the ship for today's show, the IRC is asking iOS only, and there are reward tiers that will, or not reward tiers, but they say if they
extension
exceed,
tiers.
Yeah,
okay.
If they exceed their Kickstarter target, then they will look at Android and other platforms.
Okay, look at no promises.
No, because they're not even near their Kickstarter goal. Okay. So I think once they reach that goal, they'll start setting stretch goals.
So iOS only at the moment, yes. If they make enough, then there are some stretch goals.
All right.
But still, yeah, looks kind of cool. Looks like it could be a lot of fun and help the rhinos.
Yeah. And with that, I would like to thank Jaco for being in the show, for educating us about 16-bit images and talking to us about the awesome AI that you built.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, enjoy the 100,000 Rand, man.
Yeah, no, I will, definitely.
Cool. In the show with me tonight, hosting was Gerrit Vermeulen. Where can people find you?
About.me/HawkeyZA. This guy won't be there.
Well, yeah. You can't have everything.
Yeah.
Tim Hawk, thank you very much.
Great signal.
It has that's where you can find Tim.
You have
blood, sweat, and tears.
You're such a shameless marketer when you need to be. Great Signal is gr8signal.co.za or great spelled out signal.co.za.
Or gr8signal.com even.
Yep. So go check that out. There's an app for Android. So there was some iOS love in the kicker. There's some Android love from Tim. Help us measure South Africa's network coverage for realsies. I'm Jan Vermeulen. I write for my broadband, even though the people in IRC say I need to go on a journalism course.
Zing!
Yeah.
Because they all love you and they just want you to get better. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think they read my articles and go, this guy is so full of fail rage. But I love you guys anyway, and I'm going to keep writing the good stuff that I write for my broadband, and that's where I spend most of my online time. So that's where you can see me. I'm also on Twitter occasionally at JanVZA, and I'm also on Google Plus. Never, but I do check some stuff on there. So Jan Vermeulen and then circle the ugly guy. With that, thank you for watching our show, and we'll see you for the next one.
kind of reminds me of dub.